2B2T, the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft, for the longest time has been one of, if not the most documented, discussed, and well-known servers there is. I don't think the server needs any introduction beyond that. It is synonymous with Minecraft as a whole. But behind the scenes the past few years, and only becoming clear and evident as of a few months ago, the server has been seriously declining in activity and popularity despite its reported player count. Lots of players have been proclaiming the server is dead, leaving for alternative servers or quitting for good, and after doing some research and discovering that hundreds of players, potentially as high as 40% of its player base, aren't even real anymore, they might just be onto something. With queue times as high as 2 days long, chat seemingly full of random messages not sent by actual players, and some of the server's most famous YouTubers barely uploading anymore, actually joining 2B2T and playing on it demonstrates it's not even remotely the same server as it once was all those years ago. To start though, what actual evidence or indication is there that the server is dying? It seems to have a lot of players online, right? Well, I have multiple pieces of evidence, but let's start with the server's subreddit. The 2B2T subreddit has over 200,000 subscribers and is the main location the server and updates are discussed, as well as information is shared. Yet, despite that, the subreddit sees 2, maybe 3 new posts total per day, most of which barely getting any interaction. If we use the website subreddit stats, we can see some historical activity stats for the subreddit up to late 2023, when Reddit made some controversial API changes. Throughout 2019 and 2020, the subreddit was seeing dozens of posts daily, as well as hundreds of comments. The posts began slowing down once the COVID boom came to its conclusion throughout 2021 and into 2022, but there was still at least a dozen or so posts daily and around 50 to 150 comments per day. These numbers really tanked throughout 2023 though, continuing to decline in activity to where we are today. And furthermore, while we only have limited statistics available on the subreddit's activity, we can see its growth in terms of total subscriber count really plateaued towards the end of 2022 and entering 2023. In December 2023, the subreddit had approximately 195,000 total subscribers. 2.5 years later, it has only gained another 10,000, a growth rate of under 5,000 subscribers per year. Now, the subreddit isn't a direct measure of 2B2T's activity, of course, but rather what the Reddit is a reflection of the server's community engagement and activity. Think about it. The more active a Minecraft server such as 2B2T is, the more people that will be discussing it, talking about it, and visiting subreddits and other communities surrounding it. So when those communities cease to be active and begin growing at a snail's pace, if at all, it indicates to us that the server and thus community of 2B2T are not as active or engaged as they once were. Let's move in game now. So if there is one measure of server activity we can gauge from actually being on the server, besides its player count, which we'll get into a bit later in the video, it's the speed and activity of the in-game chat. Right here I have a video about 2B2T uploaded in May of 2019, about a month before Minecraft, and thus 2B2T had a huge revitalization in popularity, as you can see here on Google Trends. The popularity of 2B2T at the time, according to Trends, was similar to what it is today. Now, take a look at the chat activity and speed. Seems pretty normal, right? Also, side note, but back then, 2B2T could only fit about 200 to 250 players online the server at the same time. Let's pop on the server, which, reminder, supports over double that at 500 to 600 players online, and look at the chat today. In this clip here, I started recording chat about 10 seconds after I joined the server, and besides a bot that automatically messaged me and some random death messages, not a single player wrote a single chat message for 47 seconds. And considering I didn't start recording for 10 seconds, that meant that about a minute went by with no messages sent, potentially longer before I joined too. I have never in my entire time playing Minecraft seen a server with over 500 people online at the same time being this quiet. It doesn't make sense for a server with this many people for it to go a minute with nobody talking whatsoever. And then the person who finally broke the silence, ironically, was complaining about the server having too many bots, which is something we'll get into later in this video too. Watch any 2B2T video from 2016 after Russia's initial invasion up until 2022 or 2023, and you'll see chat move substantially faster, despite for most of that period the server only having a third of the players online as it does now. And even when the players did begin talking a bit, it was usually just the same 2 or 3. I have never seen 2B2T's chat this dead and inactive before. Now once again, like our subreddit analysis, chat activity isn't a direct measure of server activity, but it's a significantly more accurate indicator of how active the server's current online player base is. Think about it again. An An active server with lots of players online doing things is going to by default as a product have an active chat. And just comparing older 2b2t to current 2b2t displays a night and day difference in chat activity despite the player count differences, where today over 2 times as many people are online. But then that just begs the question, if so many players are online the server and the queue is so long, why is the chat and thus server activity seemingly so completely dead? Well, this is where we can now move on to the very damning evidence. And one thing's for sure, if you are looking to play a server without a 1-day queue, check out my newly released Civilizations SMP server. This server has all the fun mechanics anarchy servers do, including raiding, PvPing, base building and exploration, as well as actual factions and guilds which you can work together to take on other factions in wars. The server also has custom RPG style dungeons, which nobody has managed to get through all the levels for or find all these secrets yet, special bosses that at the highest difficulties nobody has killed even when the entire server has fought them, and special civilization perks and buffs that you get for just being in the vanilla plus biomes. Come give it a go, both Java and Bedrock players can join, and we won't censor swear words on signs like 2b2t does. There's absolutely zero gambling whatsoever as well. Oh, and be sure to subscribe so we can reach 1 million subscribers by the end of the year, no pressure of course. We need to now talk about the 2b2t queue and one big issue with it and 2b2t as a whole that isn't really well discussed or documented yet. So currently today, if you try to log into 2b2t as a non-priority queue player, the queue will be anywhere from 1 to 2 days long. That's right, not hours, but days, and it was a bit longer, going as high as 2 to 3 days, only 1 to 2 months prior, which only makes the server's inactivity even more baffling, as if the server is so dead, why is the non-priority queue wait so absurdly long? The simple answer is bots. As you saw in that message a player sent that finally broke the silence earlier in the chat, modern day 2b2t is infested with bots that clog up the server and queue. You can already see these if you click tab and look at some of the usernames. If we use 2b2t.vc, which collects 2b2t data and statistics, we can actually get an idea of how many bots have played the server within the past 30 days, which according to the API is calculated based on the number of times a player has been online for the maximum non-priority session time limit. According to this API, a total of about 637 bots have played within the past month on 2b2t. Using the API, we can also get a list of usernames of said bots. You see, whilst on the server writing the script and recording the previous segment about the chat inactivity, I noticed a lot of strange and out of context messages would regularly be sent in the chat, such as this message here from a player called Swisher Squirtin. And hey, what do you know, this account is listed as being a bot by 2b2t.vc. I got curious, out of the 500 to 600 players on 2b2t, how many actually currently online at the time were bots. So I downloaded a list of all the bots usernames and then downloaded another list of all the players currently online the server through 2b2t.vc's Discord bot and threw them into ChatGPT, which I told to tell me the total number of usernames that appeared in both lists. According to ChatGPT, there were 216 names in common between the list of currently online players I downloaded and the list of 2b2t.vc's suspected bots. If that's the case, where at the time I downloaded this list of players, there were 528 players online, that means about 40% of the current players online were bots. That is an insane amount. Now, we need to acknowledge 2 key limitations here. Obviously, 2b2t.vc's API isn't 100% reliable at determining who is and isn't bots within the past 30 days, so some of this data could be inaccurate. Second, the time of day I was online could influence the percentage of bots and overall players present. But even if half the players listed here aren't actually bots, that would still be about 20% of the server's player count. So you can begin to see why not only is 2b2t's queue so long, as it and the actual server are filled with potentially hundreds of bots, but also why the server's chat seems so dead despite there being over 500 people online. And on the queue more specifically, these days the non-priority queue sits at about 450 to 500 people daily, with the priority queue usually being a max of 1 to 2 people, basically allowing priority queue players to instantly connect, which also makes the queue time being 1 to 2 days even more bizarre, as that means right now it's the highest it's ever been, despite the queue being almost half the size it was during 2b2t's peak. You see, back in 2020 during the COVID boom, it was common to see the queue as high as 900 to 1000 people during peak hours, more than double what it is today, as well as priority queue being about 100. According to players at the time, this 900 to 1000 player queue would take a 9 to 15 hour wait time at peak hours, and that was back when 2b2t had less player slots too. So how the hell does it make sense that despite the queue being half as long today, it takes almost twice as long to actually get in? Well, one theory from earlier this year was that the number of non-priority queue slots was massively reduced. You can see this using the 2b2t.vc public stats again. Back in March of this year, regular literally less than 100 people of the around 650 max online were non-priority queue slot players, whereas priority queue would often have well into the 500s. Now, this has improved gradually since, but simply put, the number of available slots for non-priority players are significantly less than the number of priority slots, likely much lower than it used to be all those years ago. This, alongside bots clogging the queue and server, is likely why the queue is so long today. And all this information suddenly makes sense. The reason why 2b2t seems so dead is because newer players and non-priority players joining the server simply don't want to wait over a day to play. And since so many actual players don't have the time or patience to queue for 2b2t for a day, they simply don't play, thus harming the server's actual activity as less and less newer players are joining the server and playing it. The final indicator or piece of evidence we have about 2b2t dying today is a bit different and instead relates to 2b2t's culture. Despite all the statistics I gathered and presented today, if there's one thing I found most interesting, it's the server's Google Trends graph. 2b2t, according to Google Trends, despite obviously being less popular than it was in 2020 and 2021, still remains consistently searched on both YouTube and Google. And while every other observation we've made has indicated 2b2t's significant decline in activity since late 2022, according to Google Trends, 2b2t hasn't really changed. So why is that? And I think the reason is actually pretty simple. People are still interested in 2b2t, but just aren't really interested in actually playing it. The reason 2b2t is where it is today is due to YouTubers such as Camping Russia, FidMC, Salsy1, and many more making videos playing on or talking about the server. And despite channels like FitMC and Salsy1, FitMC especially, who back in 2020 was uploading 2b2t videos every week, no longer really uploading as much anymore. In fact, both Fit and Sal only have 6 videos uploaded in the past year, and half of Sal's aren't even about 2b2t, there is still a good degree of demand for 2b2t content. The issue is, where once 2b2t content was directly about the server, its history and its events, today much of the popular 2b2t content, such as these videos here, are more about challenges or scripted interactions and gameplay. And to be clear, there is nothing wrong with that, but these types of videos are not as good actual promotion for the server as the older style informative and history deep dive videos from channels such as Fit and Sal were. As such, while there still is demand for 2b2t or 2b2t related content, it's currently being met by content that leads less players to actually want to play on and join the server. There's nobody at fault for this, it's just the changing nature of YouTube after all. Content, metas, and styles shift all the time, but 2b2t's inactivity is unfortunately somewhat of a product of that. Furthermore, the other big cultural shift that's occurred relates directly to 2b2t and anarchy culture itself. While I won't go too deep into it in this video, as I've already covered it in these 2 videos here, with recent moderation actions Mojang enforcement has forced 2b2t to make, much of the server's anarchy culture that once made it so famous has disappeared. There are now strong chat filters in game, preventing even the mildest of offensive language, which you can't even write on signs anymore either, and players have caught server operators world editing out offensive builds. The chat filters are so strong nowadays even, that while working on this video, random messages of mine would not be sent for reasons I couldn't ascertain. Most typical Minecraft SMPs aren't even remotely this strict. Now, to be fair, it's not like it was their choice, as Mojang enforcement threatened to blacklist them after all, but undeniably, 2b2t's anarchy, no rules culture is completely gone. You can't even consider the server anarchy anymore at this point, which is a stark difference to what it became popular for. These moderation changes have resulted in many players quitting the server to find other anarchy alternatives, and while it might not have directly contributed to the decline of 2b2t, it has certainly killed the culture that once existed around the server as a whole. A cultural death, if you may call it that. To conclude, I don't think 2b2t is dying or declining in popularity because it's not getting enough exposure or attention as it once was. Realistically, it was never going to maintain COVID levels of activity or the 2019 blob level. Interest is still there and has been somewhat consistent the past few years after all. What I really think is harming the server's activity is a combination of bots, insanely high queue times, the death of 2b2t's no rules anarchy culture and thus strong censorship, alongside a shift in YouTube content which no longer promotes the server as well as it once did. 2b2t likely will be around for a very long time, it's too big to fail, but who knows how much more inactive and bot infested it can get, where slowly real players don't want to put up with it anymore. Be sure to subscribe and check out my server's new Civilizations SMP, IP is below. Thank you all so much for watching.